Eleanor Jane stood 6 feet 2 inches tall in her bare feet, and when the stagecoach rattled into San Jose, California in the spring of 1878, she had to duck her head to step out onto the dusty street. The town seemed to hold its breath as she straightened to her full height, her broad shoulders blocking out the afternoon sun. She had come west with nothing but a battered trunk, and the bitter taste of rejection still fresh in her mouth. Back in Philadelphia, the ladies had whispered behind their fans. The men had looked away, embarrassed by her presence at social gatherings. Even her own mother had sighed with disappointment, saying that no man wanted a wife who could look him in the eye or, worse, look down at him. At 22 years old, Eleanor had grown tired of making herself small, of slouching at dances, of hearing the word unfortunate attached to her name. So she had taken her small inheritance and bought a ticket west, where the land was wide and maybe, just maybe, there was room for someone like her. The main street of San Jose stretched before her, lined with wooden buildings that seemed to sag in the California heat. A saloon, a general store, a bank, and what looked like a boarding house painted an optimistic yellow. Eleanor picked up her trunk, the weight of it making the men loading luggage nearby pause and stare. She was used to that. At home, she had been able to lift furniture that required 2 servants, had once carried her father's entire library down from the attic by herself. Her mother had been mortified. The boarding house smelled of lavender and beeswax. A small woman with silver hair and bright blue eyes looked up from her knitting as Eleanor entered, ducking again beneath the door frame. "My goodness," the woman said, setting aside her work. "You are a tall one, are you not?" Eleanor braced herself for the familiar mixture of pity and distaste, but the woman's face held only friendly curiosity. "Yes, madam. I am looking for a room if you have one available." "I am Mrs. Patterson, and I certainly do. Are you visiting family in San Jose?" "No, madam." "I am hoping to find work." Mrs. Patterson's eyebrows rose. "Work? What sort of work?" "Any sort, really. I can read and write, do figures. I am strong, I can lift and carry. I can cook and clean, though I am better at the lifting and carrying if I am being honest." The older woman studied her for a long moment. "You are running from something or towards something?" Eleanor set down her trunk with a thud that rattled the floorboards. "Both, I suppose, mostly from." "Well, that is honest enough. Come, let me show you a room. The rate is $4 a week, meals included, though you will have to watch your head on the upstairs beams. This house was built for normal-sized folks, I am afraid." The room was small but clean, with a narrow bed that Eleanor suspected would be too short for her. She did not care. It was hers, at least for now. She paid Mrs. Patterson 2 weeks in advance and asked where she might find work. "Well now, that depends on what you are willing to do. The general store might need help, though old Mr. Henderson is particular about who he hires. The hotel sometimes needs cleaning staff. Or," Mrs. Patterson paused, considering, "you might try the ranches outside town. Several of them are always looking for hands, especially this time of year with calving season and spring roundup. Though I have never heard of them hiring a woman for that sort of work." "Which ranch would you recommend?" "The Hobart place, about 5 miles west. Quinlan Hobart runs it, took it over from his father about 10 years ago. He is a fair man, stern but honest. Lost his wife 3 years back to fever. He has a daughter, must be about 12 now. He works that ranch from dawn to dusk, barely keeps up with it all. Could probably use the help, though I cannot imagine what he would say to a woman asking for ranch work." Eleanor thanked her and spent the rest of the day settling in. That evening, she sat in the dining room with the other boarders, a collection of clerks, a schoolteacher, and a widow who sold millinery. They all stared at Eleanor, but she kept her eyes on her plate and ate steadily. The food was good, better than she had expected. Mrs. Patterson knew her way around a kitchen. The next morning, Eleanor woke before dawn, as was her habit. She dressed in the most practical clothes she owned, a simple brown dress with a sturdy wool jacket, and laced up her walking boots. The road west out of San Jose was well traveled, cutting through rolling hills dotted with California oak. The air smelled clean, nothing like the coal smoke and horse manure of Philadelphia. She walked with long strides, eating up the distance. The Hobart Ranch announced itself with a wooden gate and a fence that stretched in both directions farther than Eleanor could see. Beyond it, cattle grazed on golden grass, and in the distance, she could make out a house, a barn, and several other outbuildings. She followed the road to the main house, a solid structure built of wood and stone, practical rather than pretty. A man was working in the corral beside the barn, his back to her as he worked with a young horse on a long lead. Eleanor stopped at the fence, watching. He was tall himself, probably just over 6 feet, with dark hair and the kind of build that came from hard physical work. His movements were patient and steady as he encouraged the horse to move in circles around him, speaking in a low voice she could not quite hear. Eleanor cleared her throat. "Excuse me. I am looking for Mr. Hobart." The man turned, and she found herself looking at a face tanned by sun and wind, with dark eyes and a strong jaw shadowed by stubble. He looked to be in his early 30s. He took in her height, her broad shoulders, and his expression shifted from surprise to something that might have been curiosity. "You found him. What can I do for you? My name is Eleanor Jane. I arrived in San Jose yesterday and I am looking for work. Mrs. Patterson at the boarding house suggested I might try here." Quinlan Hobart walked toward the fence, still holding the lead rope. Up close, Eleanor could see the lines around his eyes, the way his hands were scarred and calloused from years of labor. "What kind of work are you looking for, Miss Jane?" "Ranch work, if you have it. I know it is unusual, but I am strong and I learn quickly. I can work long hours and I am not afraid of dirt or difficulty." He looked her up and down again, not in the insulting way men back east had done, but as if he were assessing a horse he might buy. "Have you ever worked a ranch before?" "No, sir, but I have never been given the chance to try. In Philadelphia, there was not much call for someone like me." "Someone like you," he repeated. "And what does that mean?" Eleanor squared her shoulders, deciding that honesty was all she had to offer. "Too tall, too strong for polite society. I frightened the men and disgusted the women. Out here I had hoped things might be different." Something flickered in Quinlan's eyes, an understanding perhaps. "Ranch work is hard, harder than you might think. Long days, dangerous sometimes. We work with cattle, horses, machinery. One mistake can get you killed." "I understand that, Mr. Hobart. Call me Quinn. Everyone does." He tied off the lead rope and stepped through the fence rails with easy grace. Standing near him, Eleanor realized with a small shock that she was only a couple of inches taller than he was. It was the first time in years she had not had to look down at a man. "Come with me. I want to try something." He led her to the barn, a cavernous structure that smelled of hay and leather and horse. Inside, he pointed to a stack of hay bales. "Those need to go up into the loft. See that door up there? Usually takes me or one of my hands about 2 hours to get them all up. If you can lift them and hand them up to me, we will see how you do." Eleanor removed her jacket and hung it on a nail. The hay bales were heavy, easily 60 or 70 pounds each. She bent her knees, got her arms under the first one and lifted. It was an effort, but nothing she could not manage. Quinn had already climbed the ladder to the loft. She carried the bale over and lifted it up to him. He took it with a nod and stacked it inside. They worked in silence, falling into a rhythm. Lift, carry, raise, stack. Eleanor's arms began to burn, her back to ache, but she did not slow down. This was what she had come west for, to use her body the way it was meant to be used, not to sit in drawing rooms pretending to be delicate and ornamental. Sweat dampened her dress, and pieces of hay stuck to her skin, but she kept going. When the last bale was stacked, Quinn climbed down from the loft. His shirt was dark with sweat too, and he looked at Eleanor with something that might have been respect. "That usually takes me 2 hours with help. We did it in 45 minutes. You did not slow down once." "I told you I was strong." "You did." He walked to a water barrel near the barn door and used a ladle to scoop out a drink, then offered one to Eleanor. The water was cold and tasted faintly of metal. It was the best thing she had ever drunk. "I will be honest with you, Miss Jane. I have never hired a woman for ranch work. I do not know if it is even proper." "I am not concerned with proper, Mr. Hobart. I am concerned with eating and having a roof over my head." "Quinn," he corrected. "And what I am saying is, I do not care much about proper either. I care about getting the work done. I have a ranch to run, cattle to tend, horses to train. My daughter needs caring for, the house needs keeping, and there are only so many hours in the day. I have 2 hands working for me, good men, but we are always behind. If you can work as hard as you did just now every day, then I can use you." Eleanor's heart leaped. "You are saying you will hire me." "I am saying I will give you a trial. 1 month. I will pay you $20 a month plus room and board. You will sleep in the house. There is a spare room upstairs. You will help with the ranch work and probably with the house too, if I am being honest. My daughter Emma and I have been managing, but the place is not as clean as it should be, and I burn more meals than I serve. If it works out after a month, we will talk about making it permanent. Does that sound fair?" "More than fair. Thank you, Mr. Hobart." "Quinn." He held out his hand and she shook it. His grip was firm, his hand rough against hers. "You can start tomorrow. Bring your things from the boarding house. We start early here before dawn most days. Can you ride?" "No, but I can learn. You will have to. Most of the ranch work requires it." He released her hand and looked toward the house. "Come on, I will introduce you to Emma. She will be curious about you. Fair warning." The house was as practical inside as it was outside. The main room served as both kitchen and living space, with a large fireplace, a sturdy table, and mismatched chairs. Stairs led up to what Eleanor assumed were bedrooms. A girl sat at the table, bent over a book. She looked up as they entered and her eyes went wide. "Emma, this is Miss Eleanor Jane. She is going to be working here on the ranch and she will be staying in the spare room. Eleanor, this is my daughter Emma." The girl was small and slight, with dark hair in braids and her father's eyes. She looked Eleanor up and down with the frank curiosity of childhood. "You are very tall." "I am," Eleanor agreed, "and you are very observant. Are you really going to work on the ranch, like a cowboy?" "I suppose I am if your father teaches me how." Emma's face lit up with a grin. "That is wonderful. Papa works too hard. He needs help. Are you going to teach me to cook?" "Papa is terrible at it." Quinn made a sound that might have been embarrassment. "I am standing right here, Emma." "It is true, though. Last week you burned the beans so badly we had to throw the pot away." Eleanor found herself smiling. "I am a decent cook, though not exceptional. I am sure between the 2 of us we can keep your father from destroying any more cookware." She left shortly after, promising to return the next day with her belongings. The walk back to San Jose seemed shorter, her steps lighter. She had found work, real work that would use her strength instead of hiding it. And Quinn Hobart had not looked at her with pity or disgust, but with the practical assessment of someone who cared more about ability than appearance. It was more than she had dared to hope for. Mrs. Patterson was surprised when Eleanor told her she would be leaving the next day, but she refunded the remaining days and wished her well. "The Hobart place is a good one," she said. "Quinn is a hard worker, and that girl of his is sweet as pie. His wife, Sarah, she was lovely. Terrible thing, losing her to fever like that. He has been drowning in work ever since." That night, Eleanor repacked her trunk, her mind already racing ahead to the morning. She would need to prove herself, to show Quinn that hiring her was not a mistake. She would work harder than anyone, learn faster, be indispensable. This was her chance, perhaps her only chance, and she would not waste it. The next morning, she hired a cart to carry her trunk to the ranch. Quinn met her at the house, and Emma helped her carry her things upstairs. The spare room was small but comfortable, with a window that looked out over the ranch. The bed was, as she had expected, too short, but Quinn promised to see about getting a longer one built. "For now," he said, "get settled in. Tomorrow we will start teaching you to ride, and I will show you around the ranch properly. Today, just get used to the place. Emma can show you where everything is in the house and the kitchen." Emma took to this task with enthusiasm, chattering about where the pots were kept, how the stove worked best, where her father stored his coffee beans, which he was very particular about. Eleanor listened and observed, learning the rhythm of the household. She could see evidence of Quinn's attempts to keep things running everywhere. Dishes washed but not put away properly, floors swept but not scrubbed, laundry done but piled unfolded. It was the home of people doing their best but stretched too thin. That evening, Eleanor cooked dinner, roasted chicken with potatoes and carrots, simple but filling. Quinn came in from working as the sun was setting, dusty and tired. He washed up at the basin and sat at the table, and Emma brought him coffee without being asked. Eleanor served the food, feeling oddly nervous. This was the first meal she had cooked in this house, the first domestic thing she had done here. Quinn took a bite and his eyebrows rose. "This is good, really good." Emma ate with enthusiasm, and Eleanor felt a warmth in her chest that had nothing to do with the heat from the stove. She sat down to eat with them, and they talked about the ranch, about what needed doing in the coming weeks. Quinn explained the cattle needed moving to higher pasture, several horses needed breaking, the fence line on the eastern boundary needed repair. Eleanor listened, absorbing information, asking questions. After dinner, Emma went upstairs to do her schoolwork, and Eleanor helped Quinn clean up. They worked in comfortable silence, washing and drying dishes. Eleanor noticed how tired he looked, the weight he seemed to carry on his shoulders. "How long have you been running this ranch alone?" she asked. "Since my father died, about 10 years. Sarah helped before. She was good with the books, with the planning. Since she passed, it has been harder to keep up. I am sorry for your loss. Thank you." He hung the dish towel on its hook. "She would have liked you, I think. She always said the world was too quick to judge people for things that did not matter." Eleanor did not know what to say to that, so she simply nodded. The next morning began before dawn, as Quinn had promised. Eleanor woke to the sound of him moving around downstairs, starting the fire, making coffee. She dressed quickly and came down to find him at the table, reviewing a ledger by lamplight. "Morning," he said, looking up. "There is coffee. Once you have had some, we will head to the corral. I am going to start you on Daisy. She is the gentlest horse we have." The coffee was strong and bitter, giving Eleanor the jolt she needed. Outside, the world was still dark, but the eastern sky was beginning to pale. Quinn carried a saddle and bridle to the corral, where a small mare waited patiently. She was brown with white socks, and her dark eyes were kind. "First thing," Quinn said, "you need to learn how to saddle her. Watch." He demonstrated each step slowly, the blanket positioned just so, the saddle lifted and settled onto the horse's back, the cinch tightened gradually. Eleanor paid close attention, memorizing each movement. Then Quinn removed everything and handed her the blanket. "Your turn." It took Eleanor several tries to get everything right. Her hands were not used to the buckles and straps, and Daisy shifted impatiently. But Quinn was patient, correcting her gently, showing her again when she made mistakes. By the time the sun crested the horizon, Eleanor had saddled Daisy correctly 3 times in a row. "Good," Quinn said. "Now mounting. Put your left foot in the stirrup. Grab the horn with your left hand and the cantle with your right and swing yourself up." Eleanor's height actually made this easier than it might have been for someone shorter. She pulled herself into the saddle with relative ease, though sitting on the horse felt strange and precarious. "Settle into the seat," Quinn instructed. "Heels down, back straight. Hold the reins like this." He adjusted her grip. "Daisy knows what to do. Just squeeze gently with your legs to walk, pull back to stop. We are going to keep it simple today." They spent the morning in the corral with Eleanor learning to walk, turn, and stop. Daisy was patient with her inexperience, responding to even Eleanor's clumsy commands. Quinn stood in the center of the corral, calling out instructions, occasionally coming over to adjust her posture or her grip on the reins. By midday, Eleanor's legs were aching from gripping the horse, and her back was sore from the unfamiliar position. But she had managed to make Daisy walk and turn and stop, all without falling off. It was a small victory, but it felt enormous. Emma brought lunch out to them, sandwiches and cool water. They sat in the shade of the barn, and Emma peppered Eleanor with questions about Philadelphia, about what the city was like, about the ocean, which Emma had never seen. Eleanor answered as best she could, describing the cobblestone streets, the tall buildings, the way the ships came into harbor. It all seemed very far away now, like a life someone else had lived. That afternoon, Quinn took Eleanor around the ranch properly, showing her the full extent of the property. They rode side by side, Eleanor on Daisy and Quinn on his own horse, a tall black gelding named Midnight. He showed her the creek that ran through the property, the pastures where the cattle grazed, the lined shack where the hands stayed during roundup. The ranch was beautiful in a way that Eleanor's Philadelphia had never been, wild and open and free. "You have got a good seat," Quinn observed as they rode, "for someone who just learned today." "I am trying not to fall off," Eleanor admitted. "It feels like Daisy is doing most of the work." "She is for now, but you are learning quick. Tomorrow we will go a little faster, work on trotting. By the end of the week, you will be ready to help with real ranch work." They returned to the house as evening fell. Eleanor cooked dinner again, beef stew this time, using supplies from the pantry. Emma set the table without being asked, and Quinn came in from putting the horses away looking thoughtful. Over dinner, he said, "I have been thinking. Tomorrow, after we work with the horses in the morning, I am going to take you out to check on the cattle in the north pasture. It will give you a feel for that part of the work. That sound acceptable? More than acceptable. I am here to work, Quinn. Whatever you need." Emma looked between them with a small smile but said nothing. The days began to blur together in a rhythm that Eleanor found deeply satisfying. Up before dawn, coffee with Quinn while the world was still dark, then out to the corral to work with the horses. She progressed from walking to trotting to cantering, learning to move with the horse instead of fighting it. Her body ached at first, muscles protesting the new demands, but gradually she grew stronger, more confident. Quinn taught her to rope, starting with fence posts before moving to slow-moving calves. He showed her how to check the cattle for illness or injury, how to move them from one pasture to another, how to repair fences and clean water troughs. She learned to recognize each of the ranch hands. Miguel, who had worked for Quinn's father and knew every inch of the property, and young Tom, barely 20, who was learning the trade himself. Both men were surprised when Quinn introduced Eleanor as the new hand, but they took his lead and treated her with the same rough courtesy they showed each other. Miguel, especially, seemed amused by the whole situation, though not unkindly. "You are learning fast," he told her one day as they worked together mending fence. "I have seen men who have been doing this for years who are not as quick as you." "I cannot afford to be slow," Eleanor said, stretching wire tight while Miguel secured it. "I need to prove I belong here." "You belong," Miguel said simply. "The boss would not keep you if you did not. He is too practical for that." As the weeks passed, Eleanor found herself settling into life on the ranch in a way she had never settled anywhere before. She loved the physical work, the way her body grew stronger and more capable. She loved the open sky, the smell of grass and cattle and leather. She loved coming back to the house at the end of the day, tired and dirty, to cook dinner with Emma chattering beside her about her schoolwork or the book she was reading. And she found herself watching Quinn more than she probably should. The way he moved with unconscious grace, the patience he showed teaching her new skills, the quiet way he cared for his daughter and his land. He was not a talkative man, but when he spoke, his words were thoughtful and genuine. He never made her feel awkward about her height or her strength. Instead, he seemed to appreciate both. One evening, about 6 weeks after Eleanor had arrived, Emma went to bed early, tired from helping Eleanor in the garden all afternoon. Quinn and Eleanor sat on the porch in the gathering dusk, coffee cups in hand, watching the stars emerge. "You have been here almost 2 months now," Quinn said. "The trial period is over." Eleanor's heart sank. This was it, then. He was going to let her go, send her back to San Jose. She had been expecting it, really. It had all been too good to be true. "I want to offer you a permanent position," Quinn continued. $30 a month plus room and board, same as I pay Miguel. You have earned it." Relief flooded through Eleanor so strongly she felt dizzy. "Thank you, I accept. You do not have to think about it." "There is nothing to think about. This is the best job I have ever had. The only job, really, where I have felt like I fit." Quinn was quiet for a moment, looking out at the darkening land. "Can I ask you something personal?" "Of course. Why did you really leave Philadelphia?" "You said you were running from something." Eleanor considered how much to tell him. Then she decided, as she had when she first arrived, that honesty was all she had. "I was engaged briefly. To a man my mother chose. He was wealthy, respectable, everything a young woman was supposed to want. But he made it clear that once we were married, I would need to change. Lose weight, bind myself to appear smaller, wear only dresses that hid my shoulders. He wanted me to be something I was not. When I refused, he broke the engagement and told everyone in our social circle that I was unwomanly and unsuitable. My mother was mortified. She kept saying if I would just try harder to be normal, to be less, everything would be fine." Eleanor took a breath. "I did not want to be less. So I came west, where maybe I could be more instead." "He was a fool," Quinn said quietly. "What? Your former fiancé? He was a fool." Quinn turned to look at her directly. "Out here, strength is not something to hide. It is what keeps you alive. The work we do requires it. You were not made for drawing rooms and tea parties, Eleanor. You were made for this life." Something in the way he said her name, low and serious, made heat rise in her chest. She could not quite read his expression in the dim light, but there was an intensity in his gaze that made her breath catch. "Thank you," she managed. "That means more than you know." They sat in comfortable silence for a while longer, until the night grew cool enough that Eleanor shivered. Quinn noticed immediately and stood. "Come on, let us get inside. Early start again tomorrow." As summer deepened into full heat, the work on the ranch intensified. They moved the cattle to higher pastures, branded the spring calves, broke 3 new horses. Eleanor worked alongside Quinn and the other hands, her skin tanning golden despite the wide-brimmed hat she wore. Emma taught her to braid her long blonde hair tightly against her head, the way cowgirls did, to keep it out of the way. Eleanor noticed the way Quinn watched her sometimes when he thought she was not looking. There was an appreciation in his gaze that was different from the clinical assessment he had given her that first day. It made her hyper-aware of him, of the way his shirt pulled across his shoulders when he worked, the sound of his laugh when Emma said something funny, the rare smile that transformed his usually serious face. She told herself not to be foolish. Quinn was her employer, nothing more. He had given her a chance when no one else would, and she would not jeopardize that by developing inappropriate feelings. But her heart did not seem to care what her head thought was wise. One afternoon in late July, they were working together fixing the roof of one of the outbuildings. Eleanor was up on the ladder, passing shingles up to Quinn, who was on the roof itself. The sun was brutal and sweat ran down both their faces. "Last one," Eleanor called, lifting the final shingle. Quinn took it from her, their hands brushing. He secured it in place and then sat back, surveying his work. "That should do it. Come on up and take a look at what we accomplished." Eleanor climbed up beside him, settling carefully on the sloped roof. From here, she could see across the whole ranch, the fields golden in the summer heat, the cattle like dark spots on the hills, the house with its garden and the barn with its corrals. It was beautiful, and she had helped build it, maintain it, keep it running. "It is a good piece of land," Quinn said, following her gaze. "My grandfather claimed it, my father built it up, and I have been trying to keep it going. Some days I wonder if I am doing it justice." "You are," Eleanor said firmly. "This ranch is thriving, Quinn. Anyone can see that. It is thriving now because you are here helping. Before you came, I was barely keeping my head above water." He turned to look at her. "I know I already said this, but you are perfect for this life, Eleanor. I cannot imagine the ranch without you anymore." There was something in his voice, a warmth that went beyond employer to employee. Eleanor met his eyes and saw the same awareness there that she felt, the recognition of something growing between them that was more than professional respect. "Quinn," she started, not sure what she was going to say. A shout from below interrupted her. Miguel was running toward the house, waving his arms. "Boss, Tom spotted riders on the eastern boundary. Looks like trouble." The moment broke. Quinn stood quickly, reaching down to help Eleanor to her feet. They climbed down the ladder and met Miguel in the yard. "What kind of trouble?" Quinn asked. "Tom thinks they might be rustlers checking out the herd. 4 men, armed." Quinn's jaw tightened. "Get Tom and tell him to stay with the herd. Keep an eye on those men, but do not engage." "Eleanor, you are with me. We are going to ride out there and see what is happening. Miguel, stay here with Emma." Eleanor ran to the corral and saddled Daisy in record time. Quinn was ready on midnight before she was, checking his rifle. He had never taught her to shoot, and she found herself wishing he had. But she had a good rope and a lot of determination. They rode hard toward the eastern pasture, Daisy keeping pace with midnight. Eleanor's heart pounded, but her hands were steady on the reins. This was not the kind of danger she had expected when she came west, but she would face it nonetheless. Tom met them at the tree line, his young face worried. "They are about half a mile east, boss, just sitting on their horses watching the cattle. I did not like the look of it." "Good instinct," Quinn said. "Eleanor, stay with Tom. If there is trouble, you two ride back to the ranch and get Miguel." "Absolutely not," Eleanor said. "I am not staying behind while you ride into potential danger alone." Quinn looked like he wanted to argue, but something in her expression made him reconsider. Fine. But stay behind me, and if I tell you to run, you run. Understood? Understood. They rode toward the four men slowly, Quinn in front, Eleanor beside him, Tom trailing slightly behind. The strangers saw them coming and turned their horses to face them. They looked rough, their clothes dusty and worn, their faces hard. One of them, a man with a scar across his cheek, urged his horse forward. "This your land?" he called out. "It is," Quinn replied, his voice level. "Can I help you with something? We are just passing through, saw your cattle, fine-looking herd." "Thank you. If you are passing through, the main road is about 2 miles south." The scarred man grinned, but it was not friendly. "We might be interested in buying some beef. You selling?" "No." "That is unfriendly." "I am not feeling particularly friendly towards strangers eyeing my cattle like they are thinking of taking them without asking." The tension ratcheted up immediately. The four men shifted in their saddles, hands moving toward their guns. Eleanor's mouth went dry, but she kept her expression neutral, her posture relaxed. Quinn had not moved, but she could sense the coiled readiness in him. "You are accusing us of something?" the scarred man asked, his voice dangerous. "I am asking you to move along." "You are on my property without permission." For a long moment, nobody moved. Eleanor was acutely aware of the sun beating down, the sound of the cattle lowing in the distance, the weight of the rope coiled at her saddle. Then one of the other men, older with gray in his beard, spoke up. "Come on, Jack. This is not worth it. Too many witnesses, too much trouble." The scarred man, Jack, stared at Quinn for another few seconds, then spat on the ground. "Your cattle are not worth it anyway. Come on, boys." They turned their horses and rode east, not hurrying but not lingering either. Quinn watched them until they disappeared over the ridge, his hand still near his rifle. "Tom, follow them at a distance. Make sure they actually leave. Do not get close, just track them until they are well off our land." Tom nodded and rode off. Quinn turned to Eleanor, and she saw the tension in his jaw, the anger in his eyes. "That was dangerous," she said. "Could have been worse. They were testing me, seeing if I would scare easily. If I had backed down, they would have come back tonight and taken what they wanted." He took a breath, visibly calming himself. "You should have stayed back like I asked. And let you face 4 armed men alone? I think not. Eleanor, if shooting had started, you could have been killed. So could you?" She met his eyes steadily. "I am not the kind of woman who hides while others face danger, Quinn. You should know that by now." He stared at her for a long moment, and then something in his expression softened. "No, you are not. I should have known that." He reached out and took her hand, his rough palm warm against hers. "Thank you for having my back." "Always," Eleanor said, and meant it with her whole heart. They rode back to the ranch together, still holding hands until they had to separate to navigate through a narrow gate. Emma met them in the yard, her face pale with worry. Quinn dismounted and hugged his daughter tight. "Everything is fine, sweetheart. Just some drifters who got lost. They are gone now." Tom returned an hour later, reporting that the 4 men had indeed left the area, heading east into the hills. Quinn thanked him and told both hands to keep an extra watch on the herds for the next few days, just in case. That night, after Emma had gone to bed, Quinn and Eleanor sat on the porch again. The stars were brilliant overhead, the night air cooling pleasantly after the day's heat. "I have been thinking," Quinn said slowly, "about what you said today about not being the kind of woman who hides." "Yes. You are not like anyone I have ever met, Eleanor Jane. You are strong, capable, brave. You work harder than most men I know. You are good with Emma, good with the animals, good at everything you try." He turned to face her. "And I have been trying not to notice, but I cannot help it. You are beautiful too, not in the way society says women should be beautiful, but in a way that is real and true." Eleanor's heart was pounding so hard she was sure he could hear it. "Quinn, let me finish. I know this is not appropriate, you work for me and that makes this complicated, but I need to tell you how I feel because it is eating me up inside. I care about you, Eleanor. More than I should, more than I plan to. If you do not feel the same way, I understand and we will never speak of it again. But if there is any chance that you might care for me too, I needed you to know." Eleanor could hardly breathe. All the feelings she had been trying to suppress came flooding to the surface. "I do care for you. I have been trying not to, telling myself it was foolish, that you were just being kind by giving me a job. But every day I fall a little more in love with this place, with this life, with Emma. With you." Quinn stood and pulled her to her feet. They stood facing each other in the starlight, and Eleanor realized that she did not have to look down at him, not really. They were nearly the same height, eye to eye, equal. "Can I kiss you?" Quinn asked, his voice rough with emotion. "Yes," Eleanor whispered. He cupped her face with both hands and kissed her gently, reverently, as if she were something precious. Eleanor's arms came up around his shoulders, and she kissed him back with all the longing she had been holding inside. He tasted like coffee and felt like home. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Quinn rested his forehead against hers. "I do not know how to do this," he admitted. "I have not courted anyone since Sarah. I do not want to mess this up." "We will figure it out together," Eleanor said. "We are good at that, working together." He smiled, and it was the warmest, most genuine smile she had ever seen from him. "Yes, we are." They sat back down on the porch, this time with Quinn's arm around Eleanor's shoulders and her head resting against him. It felt natural, right, like pieces of a puzzle finally fitting together. "What do we tell Emma?" Eleanor asked. "The truth when the time is right. She is a smart girl, she has probably already figured it out. She adores you, you know. Half the time I think she likes you better than me." Eleanor laughed. "That is not true, she worships you." "She needs a mother," Quinn said quietly. "I have tried to be both, but it is not the same. I see the way she looks at you, the way she lights up when you teach her things. You are good for her, Eleanor, good for both of us." They talked late into the night, sharing stories from their pasts, their hopes for the future. Quinn told her about his marriage to Sarah, how they had grown up together and fallen into love as easily as breathing. He spoke of losing her with a sadness that had dulled with time but would never fully disappear. Eleanor told him more about Philadelphia, about feeling like a misfit her entire life, about the relief of finally finding a place where she belonged. "You do belong here," Quinn assured her. "This ranch, this life, it suits you. I knew it the day you first arrived when I watched you lift those hay bales without complaint. You were made for this, Eleanor. Or maybe this was made for me," she suggested. "Either way, I am not going anywhere." "Good," Quinn said and kissed her again. The next morning, Emma came down to breakfast to find Eleanor and Quinn sitting closer together than usual, their hands intertwined on the table. The girl stopped in the doorway, looked at them, and then broke into a huge grin. "Finally," she exclaimed. "I was wondering how long it would take you two to figure it out," Quinn laughed. "Were we that obvious? Papa, you have been looking at Eleanor like she hung the moon for weeks now, and Eleanor blushes every time you compliment her work. I am 12, not blind." Eleanor felt her face heat. "We were trying to be subtle. You were not very good at it." Emma came over and hugged Eleanor tightly. "I am glad, though, really glad. You make Papa happy and you make me happy too. Does this mean you will stay forever, if your father will have me?" Eleanor said, looking at Quinn. "Forever sounds about right," Quinn agreed. As summer turned toward autumn, Eleanor and Quinn's relationship deepened. They were careful to maintain propriety, especially around Emma and the ranch hands, but everyone on the ranch could see the change in them. Quinn smiled more, laughed easier. Eleanor moved through her days with a lightness that had never been there before. They courted in the way of ranch people, finding moments together in the midst of hard work, riding out to check the cattle and stealing kisses under the oak trees, working side by side mending fence and talking about everything and nothing, sitting on the porch after Emma went to bed, planning for the future. One evening in late September, as they watched the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink, Quinn said, "Marry me." It was not a question but a statement, said with the same certainty he brought to every important decision. Eleanor turned to look at him, her heart full to bursting. "Is that a proposal or an order?" "Both, maybe. I love you, Eleanor. I want you to be my wife, Emma's mother, my partner in all things. I want to wake up next to you every morning for the rest of my life. So yes, I am asking you to marry me." "Then yes," Eleanor said simply. "Yes to all of it." Quinn pulled a ring from his pocket, simple silver with a small diamond. "This was my grandmother's. If you do not like it, we can get something else." "It is perfect," Eleanor said, and it was. He slipped it onto her finger and it fit as if it had been made for her. They told Emma that night and she cried happy tears and hugged them both. "Can I call you Mama?" she asked Eleanor shyly. "I would love that," Eleanor said, her own eyes damp. They were married in November, a small ceremony in San Jose with Mrs. Patterson and a few townspeople as witnesses. Eleanor wore a simple blue dress, and Quinn wore his best suit. Emma stood beside them, holding a bouquet of late-season wildflowers. When the minister pronounced them husband and wife, and Quinn kissed Eleanor in front of everyone, there was not a dry eye in the small church. The reception was held at the ranch, with Miguel and Tom and several neighbors joining them for food and music. Someone had a fiddle, and they danced in the yard as the sun set. Quinn held Eleanor close and she rested her head on his shoulder, perfectly matched in height, perfectly matched in every way that mattered. "Mrs. Hobart," Quinn murmured against her ear. "How does that sound?" "Like home," Eleanor replied. Their wedding night was tender and passionate, a culmination of months of growing love and desire. Eleanor had been nervous, having never been with a man before, but Quinn was patient and gentle, showing her the pleasures of married life with reverence and care. Afterward, lying in his arms in the bed they would share for the rest of their lives, Eleanor felt a completeness she had never imagined possible. The years that followed were full and happy. Eleanor threw herself into ranch life with even more dedication, now that it was truly her home, her legacy. She and Quinn worked as a team, making decisions together, building the ranch into one of the most successful in the area. They added more land, bought better breeding stock, and improved the house and outbuildings. Emma grew into a capable young woman, tall like her stepmother and strong like both her parents. She learned to rope and ride as well as any of the hands, and she had Eleanor's head for figures and Quinn's patience with animals. By the time she was 16, she was running parts of the ranch herself. Eleanor and Quinn's first child together, a son they named Quinlan Jr. but called QJ, was born in the spring of 1880, 2 years after Eleanor had first arrived at the ranch. He was a sturdy baby with his father's dark hair and his mother's height already evident in his long limbs. Quinn cried when he first held him, overcome with joy and gratitude. A daughter, Rebecca, followed 2 years later, and then another son, James, 2 years after that. The house rang with the sounds of children, and Eleanor discovered that she was as good at mothering as she was at ranch work. She raised her children to be strong and capable, to value hard work and kindness, to never judge people by appearances. Emma married a neighboring rancher's son when she was 22, a good man who loved her fierce independence and admired her skill with horses. She and her husband started their own ranch about 10 miles from the Hobart place, and Emma visited often, bringing her own children to learn from their grandparents. On a warm summer evening in 1895, Eleanor and Quinn sat on the porch as they had done so many times before. Their children were grown now, QJ working the ranch alongside his father, Rebecca married and living in San Francisco, James studying veterinary medicine in Sacramento. Emma had 4 children of her own, and she brought them to visit every Sunday. 17 years, Quinn said, reaching for Eleanor's hand. 17 years since you walked up to that corral and asked for work. Best decision I ever made, Eleanor replied, lacing her fingers through his. Their hands were both calloused and scarred from years of labor, but they fit together perfectly, as they always had. I was terrified when I hired you, Quinn admitted. Terrified that I was making a mistake, that people would talk, that it would not work. But you proved yourself in the first hour, and you have been proving me right every day since. You gave me a chance when no one else would. You saw strength where everyone else saw a flaw. You made me feel, for the first time in my life, like I was exactly who I was supposed to be. Quinn pulled her close and kissed her temple. You are perfect for this life, Eleanor. I knew it then, and I know it now. From inside the house came the sound of QJ playing guitar and the laughter of his siblings visiting for Sunday dinner. The ranch spread out before them, golden in the setting sun, prosperous and beautiful. Cattle grazed in the distance, horses moved in the corrals, and everything they had built together thrived. Eleanor leaned against her husband's shoulder, feeling the solid warmth of him, the steady beat of his heart. She thought about the frightened, uncertain woman who had stepped off that stagecoach in San Jose all those years ago, too tall and too strong and too everything for the world she had been born into. That woman had been looking for a place to hide, to disappear. Instead, she had found a place to stand tall, to use every bit of strength she possessed, to be needed and wanted and loved exactly as she was. She had found work that fulfilled her, children who brought joy, and a man who saw her not as too much but as exactly enough. What are you thinking about? Quinn asked, noticing her smile. That I was too tall and too strong, Eleanor said, and you told me I was perfect for this life. You were right. I am always right, Quinn said with mock seriousness, then laughed when Eleanor elbowed him gently. But especially about that. They sat together as the sun set, the air cooling pleasantly. Tomorrow there would be work to do, fences to mend, cattle to move, 1,000 tasks that kept the ranch running. But tonight there was this, the porch, the sunset, the sound of their family inside, and the knowledge that they had built something lasting and true. QJ emerged from the house, now 25 and the spitting image of his father. Mama, Papa, dinner is ready. Emma just arrived with the kids. Eleanor stood, Quinn rising beside her. They walked into the house together, into the warmth and noise and love that filled every corner. The table was crowded with family, Emma's children running around in excitement, Rebecca's husband telling stories, James discussing his studies. They sat down to eat, the family Eleanor had never dared to dream of back in her Philadelphia days. Quinn said grace, thanking God for the food, the family, the land, and the blessings they had been given. When he mentioned Eleanor specifically, thanking God for bringing her to their lives, she felt tears prick her eyes. After dinner, the children begged for a story, and Eleanor found herself telling them about the day she arrived at the ranch, how nervous she had been, how their grandfather had tested her with hay bales and then given her a chance. The older children had heard the story before but listened with rapt attention anyway. The younger ones asked questions, wanting to know every detail. Were you scared? One of Emma's daughters asked. Terrified, Eleanor admitted. But sometimes the best things in life require us to be brave even when we are scared. And you stayed forever, the little girl pressed. I stayed forever, Eleanor confirmed, meeting Quinn's eyes across the room, because this is where I belonged. Later, after the family had gone home and the house was quiet, Eleanor and Quinn lay in bed together. The room was dark except for the moonlight streaming through the window. Quinn's arm was around her, her head on his chest, listening to the steady rhythm of his breathing. I love you, he said into the darkness. I know I do not say it enough, but I do. Every day I wake up grateful that you walked onto this ranch. I love you too, Eleanor whispered. Every day I am grateful you saw something worth keeping in a woman the world had rejected. The world is full of fools, then. You are the strongest, most capable, most beautiful woman I have ever known. You are an amazing mother, an incredible partner, and the love of my life. There is nothing about you I would change. Eleanor tilted her head up to kiss him, pouring 17 years of love and gratitude into it. They made love slowly, tenderly, with the comfortable familiarity of long marriage, combined with a passion that had never faded. As Eleanor drifted off to sleep in her husband's arms, she thought about how far she had come from that frightened young woman on the stagecoach. She had found her strength, her purpose, her place in the world. She had found a man who loved her not despite who she was, but because of it. She had built a family, a home, a legacy. She was too tall and too strong, and she was perfect for this life. The rancher had been right all along. In the years that followed, Eleanor and Quinn continued to work the ranch together, though they gradually turned over more responsibility to QJ and the other hands. They became the kind of old couple people pointed to as an example of true partnership, still holding hands after decades of marriage, still working side by side even as their hair grayed and their bodies slowed. They watched their grandchildren grow and have children of their own. They celebrated anniversaries and birthdays and holidays, always surrounded by the family they had created. The ranch prospered, growing from a modest operation to one of the most respected in California. When Quinn died peacefully in his sleep at the age of 78, Eleanor held his hand and whispered her love one last time. She mourned him deeply, but without regret, grateful for the life they had built together. She lived another 5 years, continuing to work on the ranch until her final days, teaching her great-grandchildren the same lessons Quinn had taught her about hard work, honesty, and the value of strength in all its forms. When Eleanor Jane Hobart passed away at the age of 71, surrounded by her children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren, the entire county came to her funeral. They buried her next to Quinn on a hill overlooking the ranch, under an old oak tree where they had often stolen kisses in their courting days. Her tombstone was simple. Eleanor Jane Hobart, beloved wife, mother, and ranch woman, too tall and too strong, perfect for this life. And there, on that California hillside, she rested beside the man who had seen her worth when no one else would, who had given her not just a job but a purpose, not just a home but a family, not just love but a legacy that would endure for generations. The ranch continued under QJ's capable management, and then his sons and his sons after that. The story of how it all began with a tall woman stepping off a stagecoach and asking for work became family legend, told and retold to each new generation. It was a reminder that sometimes the things the world sees as flaws are actually strengths waiting for the right place to shine. And in the hearts of everyone who knew her story, Eleanor Jane remained what she had always been, proof that there is no such thing as too tall, too strong, or too much. There is only finding the life and the love that fits you perfectly.